So I came back from AmericaFest, and everybody's in the news. If you haven't heard it yet, it was a food fight. Bannon's calling out Shapiro. Shapiro's calling out Candace Owens, thank God for that. And then Megyn Kelly and Tucker Carlson. It was, woo! It was incredible. I'm playing it for you. I'm going to play some segments so you guys get a front row seat to Charlie's AmericaFest food fight, and it's interesting. Where we're at, folks, is the next level, upside down world, next level spiritual warfare. That's this is a series I've got that goes with today's message, because we're going to have discerning like we've never had. We're going to have to stay in the Holy Spirit. We're going to have a war in culture with midterms like we have not seen before. But you know what? It's going to be a good year for you if you're ready for the next level. What I want you to do is I want you to go to lancewallnau.com/next level or call 1-800-910-6349. Just write it down. Write down the phone number. What's the number again? It's 800-910-6349. And when this program's over, call. It's for your gift of any amount. If all you want to do is pay postage, just pay postage. Get it. It's my gift to you, the next level warfare. And don't miss today's show about the AmFest Food Fest. Welcome to a controversial version of the Lance Wallnau Show. I'm back in the studio. I was at AmericaFest, AmFest, and all its various ways you describe it. Over 20,000 people attending in Arizona. Of course, the attending was, as I expected, I think a sympathetic memorial service, support once again for Charlie Kirk, whose absence was painfully conspicuous by the fact that everywhere you went, you saw pictures of him, but he wasn't on the stage. Now, it's controversial today because the AmericaFest itself was controversial, and you have to be living in a little bubble not to know some of this, but it's okay. I encourage bubble living. I think bubble living is good because so much of the stuff that's out there is garbage, and all you're going to have to do is constantly be decontaminating yourself from thought viruses. Nevertheless, I want to talk about this as soon as possible. This may be coming into you during the holidays, and I realize that you've got holiday stuff going on, but hey, man, the spirit world doesn't stop just because you're opening packages and it's New Year's. So here we go. Let's start with the big point that I want to make. Ben Shapiro's getting a lot of heat from AmFest because bring up the X post. Will, that I just gave you a minute ago. And it's a post that basically says, for all the critics at AmericaFest, Ben Shapiro was the only one other than Rob Schneider to call out Candace Owens. I want you to catch that. He was the only one other than Rob Schneider that I heard on the main stage who called out Candace Owens. Now, the reason I'm saying that is because he called out Tucker and Megyn Kelly and others for not standing behind Erica. Okay, bring it back again. I'm not finished reading it. So, and that matters. The others fear her large ratings. They are afraid of Candace's audience. I've heard him say, she's got a big following. She's got a really big following. Both Megyn and Tucker said that, which means I better think about what I do. And that's cowardice, actually. As Rob Schneider said, we need to come together on the right. And Candace Owens has promised to be 3% less completely retarded. But not for long, because she just posted a whole list of Jews that were involved with the slave trade, just to stoke some animus and hatred against Jewish people, against blacks, and blacks against Jewish people, as though she wasn't vile enough with her viral broadcast. But let me go ahead and play 2 minutes so you can get the flavor. And yeah, it was interesting because, Bannon is going to come out. My buddy Steve Bannon's going to call, Ben a cancer, and he's going to try to take over Turning Point like he tried to take over Breitbart. And the audience doesn't know what's going on. I mean, most of them are the 25 or 30,000. I think it was like 30,000 at some point. Young people, 50%. I don't know what the drama is in the family. But when polled, half liked what Ben said and half liked what Tucker said, which means they're completely confused, which is good. I'd rather have confusion than have the wrong idea. But let's listen to what Ben had to say.
So, if Candace Owens decides to spend every day since the murder of Charlie Kirk casting aspersions at TPUSA, and the people who work here, who worked with Charlie every single day, his best friends, to cast aspersions at Mikey McCoy and Andrew Colvin and Blake Neff and Tyler Boyer, and yes, at Erica Kirk, and to imply or outright claim complicity in a cover-up over Charlie's murder, to spew absolutely baseless trash implicating everyone from French intelligence to Mossad to members of TPUSA in Charlie's murder or a cover-up in that murder, then we, as people with a microphone, have a moral obligation to call that out by name. Erica Kirk and TPUSA never should have been put in the position to have to defend themselves against such specious and evil attacks, particularly in a time of mourning. And the people who refuse to condemn Candace's truly vicious attacks, and some of them are speaking here, are guilty of cowardice. Yes, cowardice. The fact that they have said nothing while Candace has been vomiting all sorts of hideous and conspiratorial nonsense into the public square for years is just as cowardly. Fourth, because we have a duty to truth, we also have a duty to provide you with evidence of the claims that we make. Emotive accusations, conspiracy theories, and just gassing questions, that's lazy and stupid and misleading. None of them are a substitute for truth. None of them are a substitute for evidence. So, when Candace Owens says, "I don't know, but I know," that is retarded. And we are all more retarded for having heard it.
Well, you can hear the crowd, because what Ben was getting was his support for his opposition to Tucker, because Tucker we all love. But Tucker goes off, and you got to know when, your crazy uncle is talking, Nazi propaganda at the Thanksgiving table, and you roll your eyes and change the subject. You got to know that you love people, and we're going to have to talk about that, because the tendency in the world is you go all or nothing. Now, I'm going to warn you right now, 2026 is going to be the year of the sifting and the year of the shifting. The shifting and the sifting. Get that straight. That's a prophetic word. Because those who have ears to hear are going to have to discriminate between truth and error, falsehood and reality. And the conspiracies are going to continue to roll, baby. And, our tribe has a tendency to be indiscriminate. And we tend to put authority on whoever has a microphone, and that's adolescent. Not everyone who comes in to your ear is an authority on the subject. But if you're not discerning, you're going to treat them all with equal weight. Then you got the quack down the street that's got the remedy for your thyroid problem on the same level with the actual doctor here who knows what the thyroid problem is and can help you rescue yourself. So let's go a little deeper into the pathology of what was really happening there at AmFest. Russell Brand, actually, in Q&A, this is interesting. Ben has to take on the anti-Semitic arguments against Israel. And one of the classic ones that comes up, and it's almost like separation of church and state. Once you hear it, it may be wrong, and it may even be an accurate quote from Jefferson, but you're going to hear it from the left, because once a soundbite gets out there, if it's transferable like a virus, it gets in, and you can count on, like the Jedi mind trip, the average person is going to repeat separation of church and state. Well, here you're going to hear anytime people are anti-Israel and they don't like Israel, they're going to go to the people that will talk about in 1967, during the Arab war against Israel, the Israelis, shot at and killed Americans on an American ship that had a flag waving. And then Ben Shapiro has to go back to 1967 and explain it was a mistake that was made, as happens in war, because the ship was out of a certain territory it was supposed to be in, and Israel thought it was Egyptian. But you'll hear the What's interesting, I don't know whether we picked the soundbite where you can hear the questioner. The questioner gets the answer and then comes back twice as vociferous on, yeah, but they shot an American ship. And then you can hear there's a bias, a spiritual virus. That's the virus of the bias that's in the person, anti-Israel. So let's go hear this Q&A.
You cited during your speech truth as the most important tenet of American conservatism. Why, therefore, did you call irrelevant the Israeli attack in 1967 on the USS Liberty, which left dozens of American servicemen dead and hundreds wounded?
So what I actually said is that if we're looking at modern Israeli-American relations, looking at an attack that happened mistakenly by multiple Navy reports, multiple Israeli reports, and all available evidence, and using that attack in order to undermine today's relations between Israel and America, that's irrelevant. As irrelevant as it would be to cite a piece of evidence from World War II or from 1776 to define America's relations with, for example, Great Britain or Germany today. That does not mean that the attack wasn't horrible for the Americans involved, that it wasn't bloody and terrible. The Israeli government paid reparations to the people who were killed. If you look at the actual military record of what happened on the USS Liberty, it was clearly a mistaken and tragic attack. The people who frequently cite the USS Liberty, however, are not talking about the specifics of the USS Liberty. I suspect that the vast majority of people who bring this up are doing so in order to suggest that Israel deliberately attacked an American ship because Israel deliberately wants to harm America. It is connected generally with a larger point. I wonder if that's your point.
If the truth matters,
here it is,
then the Israeli government must be held accountable for that attack. The American flag was flying on that ship. You do not mistake an American ship for a foreign one when our flag is flying.
So, and we can spend the rest of the time talking about the specifics of the U.S. Liberty attack, or you can actually go look at the naval investigations that were done, multiple naval investigations that were done. The reality is that people were flying Mirage planes for the Israeli military at the time. The USS Liberty was sailing in an area where it had essentially gone off-grid. The Israeli military mistook it for an Egyptian ship. They thought it was shelling Al Arish, which happened not to be true. In the initial attack, the American flag was knocked down, and then the attack went on for about 90 minutes. And then, as soon, you can hear this, by the way, on the tapes of the Israeli pilots talking to each other, as soon as they realize that it's an American ship, they call off the attack, they speed a ship to try and help the USS Liberty. There have been multiple unfortunate friendly fire incidents between Allied forces, including, for example, in the Gulf War, where U.S. forces were responsible for killing about 9 British troops during the Gulf War. It's an unfortunate reality of war, but you're not answering my question, which is, what is your broader agenda in asking the question? Because I suspect that your question is not limited to your specific ire over an incident that happened in 1967.
Correct. And you can hear it in the belligerence of the response. It isn't like, can you give me more facts to help me feel comfortable with the idea that this wasn't intentional? And, okay, it happened in 1967. So here's the point. He goes on, Shapiro goes on, says they were flying Mirage planes. The flag was knocked down in an initial attack, so it wasn't cleared during the rest of the attack. But my point is this. People that cite selective data like that are doing it because they have an anti-Israel bias. And you'll see it on the left all the time. They'll cite any incident where the right maybe had committed some act of violence. I can't find it, but they'll quote it as a justification and a fixation, like the George Floyd incident. You know, that incident became inflammatory, wasn't even properly examined, but it became the rallying point for the riots and the whole BLM movement. And at some point, you got to go back and say, is that issue really the issue? Or isn't this a pretext for airing your anti-Semitic, anti-Israel vibe? All right, we'll be right back. Who said you're supposed to be comfortable with your capacity? God didn't say, are you comfortable? He's actually there as the comforter. Why do you think the Holy Ghost is called the comforter? Because of how uncomfortable you're going to get when you start flowing in that which God has for you.
Lance Wallnau has spent decades teaching believers how to recognize spiritual battles most people never see. Because some resistance doesn't come from what you did wrong. It comes from what was never dealt with. Patterns that repeat and struggles that feel heavier than they should be. Pressure that seems to come from nowhere. Next Level Spiritual Warfare confronts the unseen forces that operate through bloodlines, agreements, and spiritual doors, and shows you how to shut them down.
Next level spiritual warfare. The spiritual warfare that's going to be in your own mind saying, I can't do this, I can't do that, how am I going to do it? Because we're going up, we're going to deal with another level. Hear more accurately, and God will add more and more revelation to plunder your strong man's house.
This teaching was created to help you recognize what you're really fighting and to activate the spiritual authority to break it. You can receive the full message from Lance Wallnau today for your generous gift of any amount at lancewallnau.com/next level or by calling 800-910-6349. Take the next step in shutting down resistance and stepping fully into what God has prepared for you.
All right, so just to give you the flavor of the event, I don't even know if it helps the program if I do this. Russell Brand, I'm going to skip it for now. Russell Brand comes in the middle, and he jokes about how in the world did I end up between, Tucker and Ben Shapiro. And he makes a very beautiful and gracious explanation how this is all beyond him to make the distinctions as to each other's differences, but Christ changed his life. And it shows the extent to which Charlie impacted Turning Point and the nation in the last 24 months of his life by doubling down on the fact that he had come to the conclusion, almost like I'd say with almost like a genius capacity to, in his young age, to go to the very root philosophically of what the foundation of recovering America is for the next generation. He's talking to the under 30 crowd. And it's Jesus Christ is the foundation, the transforming power of the gospel, the absolutes that come from the word of God that align with the reality of a transformation that comes through Jesus. And Jesus becomes, unlike earlier years, which Candace Owens says, he got really off on the Jesus thing. I don't even think Candace is actually a Christian. I think you got to check that out, folks. Let's say she is, and she's just an ignorant Christian. But her attacking Charlie for getting so into Jesus is instead of politics, and he got off somehow. I would say that he got on. And what he did was he lurched Turning Point to the place where it's at now, where Jesus becomes central. Not, we have Christians here, but we are a Christian nation, which J.D. Vance will articulate. And that's going to be a really interesting, defining statement when his presidential turn comes around, because the Antichrist forces are going to try to pulverize you're going to have a spiritual conflict like nobody's business. It's getting set up now, which is why it worries me when I hear the young crowd, yay! When the kid talks about, what about the USS Liberty attack in 1960? Yay! Now that yay, a lot of young energy you hear, then a lot of young female energy as opposed to male energy. Started at the Student Action Summit that Turning Point did when Charlie was under duress with cutting back on anti-Israel sentiment at a time when he was upset about the war potential with Iran, and people around him were agitating America first, America first, America only. We don't need to get involved with the Middle East war. Not realizing Trump understands, Daddy Trump gets, you cannot have the little world that we're all connected in geopolitically and have Iran with a nuclear capacity to threaten the United States or any other country, but particularly the United States. He had to take them out because they're a threat to us. Understandably, there was a lot of pressure on Charlie at that point to be worried about the expansion of the war. And he went into the president. He came back and he said, we just got to trust him. But the anti-Israel sentiment was strong at SAS, and there wasn't a strong polemic supporting. So I heard the virus go in July. I was out of the country listening because I work with Turning Point, and I support them. So I'm listening, I'm going, Charlie, you don't realize that the Epstein file thing and the war in the Middle East is opening up a door for a seed to get into the youth, which is already struggling with his position on Israel. And before too long, if not changed in America, we'll be voting against Israel. And folks, I'm just going to tell you, I don't have the big platform at this moment that's going to get the pushback for this statement. But I'm going to tell you something, which if I had a bigger platform, I'd create incendiary, hail would come down on my head. the day that America partitions land again and stands with the Muslim nations against the Jews and takes territory from them and carves that country up, is the day that the United States sees the de-dollarization of our economy and the sudden plummeting into an economic freefall with China and a Muslim figure emerging that is going to ultimately coalesce into other wars that will redistribute into the eschatological framework of what the Bible predicts is all the nations coming against Jerusalem and the Lord returning to deliver Israel, his feet touching the Mount of Olives, and he will not come until he hears, "Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord," not from the Gentiles, but from the Jews that rejected him. Then he returns to Jerusalem and establishes his kingdom. I don't anticipate that happening in my lifetime, but I'm telling you that is the literate, educated, eschatological viewpoint of evangelical and Pentecostally educated Christians. That's the scenario. And I pray to God that America can get this anti-Israel virus out now before we start tripping our way down to a J.D. Vance presidency where they will test his resolve in the Middle East and he makes a bad decision regarding the interests of the United States and world peace, and that sacrifices have to be made. And we will guarantee for Israel, the moment we go down that road, remember I said this, kaboom, because that's just the way history is. That's what happened to Spain. Spain went down after they hurt Israel. Great Britain went down. Germany got destroyed. The Soviet Union got divided up. And the last time we had a president that talked about partitioning the land, I remember I was with Kim Clement. He started prophesying a hurricane called Katrina that was going to hit the United States. Within 10 days of Bush saying they have to partition the land, bam, we got a punch like we never got by Mother Nature. I'm telling you, and this is not the argument that the Tuckers or my buddy Steve Bannon or the intellectuals will say bears any weight. Well, it's your biblical world. But if you're going to keep talking about America having a spiritual war and about how we're a Christian nation, then and that this is somehow that there's a relevance to the fourth turning from an awakening point of view, a biblical point of view, you can't reject then the Bible from the conversation. Anyway, Bannon goes after Ben. I want you to hear this because Bannon comes out firing. Play cut 3.
Now, Benji Shapiro sat up here last night, and he was all, it's all about the truth. Ben, I've known you a long time, brother. You can't handle the truth. Let's face it, Ben Shapiro is the farthest thing from MAGA. Let's be blunt. He is a hardcore never-Trumper. He's a hardcore never-Trumper. In the spring of 16, he tried to upend Breitbart. He walked off the job, made a big deal about some incident in Mar-a-Lago with Corey Lewandowski. He tried to turn it to Ted Cruz from Donald Trump because he hated Donald Trump. In the general election, he barely supported Donald Trump. The first sign of when President Trump gets sent back to Mar-a-Lago, the very first individual that jumped on the Ron DeSantis train, the Israel First train, was Ben Shapiro. And those are the darkest days we had. In 21 and 22, you guys were there. He's consistently been against Trump, and now that President Trump doesn't back the Greater Israel Project. What is Greater Israel? It's not about Israel itself. It's about an expansionist Israel, an imperial Israel that Netanyahu and that crowd have thought up. And the Israel First crowd is Ben Shapiro, Tel Aviv Mark Levin, and many others that want to put that ahead of America's interests.
All right, so I want you to hear that because we're adults here. I don't want you to always have to be shielded from what's going on. The weakness, though, with Brother Steve's argument, who has educated me on capital markets and Lao Beijing and many other things, is that Ben Shapiro wasn't the only one who wasn't for Trump. Let's be honest about it. Glenn Beck was anti-Trump, scared to death of him. He was a total Ted Cruz guy. Glenn thought that Trump was going to come after him. He said he was paranoid. He's going to come after me. No, and then Trump called him and said, oh, it's all water under the bridge. I met with Glenn. He told me, Trump called, couldn't have been nicer. And Glenn said, well, I kind of feel bad about what I said. Oh, don't worry about that. I'm glad you're on our side and we need you. Trump isn't that kind of guy. By the way, yeah, Ben wasn't for Trump. A lot of Christians were for Ted Cruz and Ron DeSantis. They didn't know what Trump was. May I remind you, Joe Rogan, Elon Musk, Tucker Carlson, they were all not Trumpers. And Ben said reluctantly, and he admitted it. He said, I have to say that the way that Trump is governing is more conservative than I thought. And when he calls it right, I got to get behind him. And Ben has gotten educated like others. So I don't know that that's an argument. He's not MAGA. And expansionist Israel is not what Israel wants. Dear God, Israel had their country given to them in the UN and then shrunk down. Churchill actually shrunk it down to the Transjordan. They lost 93% of the territory given to them. And then they're down to 13% of what was promised to them by the UN. And they're holding on. Between the West Bank and Gaza, they got Arabs everywhere. 50% of the population. So they're surviving, attacked on 7 fronts. My God, Netanyahu's interested in expansionism. He's interested in holding on to what they've got. Anyway, Tucker, I got 1 minute and 37 seconds. I got too much material to cover. We got a 30-minute show here. I guess that's my problem. I got to play one disturbing quote here. 1 minute 23. Quick. Quote 5. Tucker's big with Muslims. He likes Muslims.
Most people agree with that. Most Americans have more in common with each other than they disagree on. And almost everybody agrees on that. And almost everybody is willing to tolerate a good faith argument about how to get there. Except a few. And they're the ones running around calling everyone an anti-Semite. But everyone else is like, yeah, of course, that should be the debate. And they'll vote for you. They want that because they know they haven't had that. That's the fact. And what you're watching now, attacking millions of Americans because they're Muslims, it's disgusting. And I'm a Christian. I'm not a Muslim. I know there's a lot of effort to claim I'm a secret jihadi. I'm not. You should not attack people on those grounds. And you're seeing it from Republicans. What the hell are you doing? What you're doing is trying to divide the country. And I've lived through 50 years of this crap. All these fake race wars that they're always promoting. Oh, go hate each other while we loot the treasury. That's exactly what's going on. And most people are totally sick of that. So, yes, there is a possibility for a huge coalition of decent people once they free their minds from the traps set for them by others and realize, wait a second, we all want to make this country better. And the 15% or 30% who don't, okay. Good luck in Maryland or wherever you wind up. But the rest of us would like to fix it.
All right, so here's the deal with Tucker. Tucker's making an argument that would have been done great when Trump was running. This is the argument that was against Trump. Why are you targeting the Middle East and trying to inhibit their immigration? If you look at Europe, the issue is not hating millions of Muslims. I'm a Christian. I can't do that. I go to the Middle East. I evangelize everybody. Everyone needs to meet Jesus, including the Arab community and the Jews and all the Gentiles and the communists and the criminals. The point is, Tucker is naive. You've got to understand his worldview, which is when he brings Nick Fuentes on, what he's kind of like leaning into. You got to understand he's not resisting, he's leaning into. He is completely ignorant of the fact that in Texas right now, we've got how many? 300 mosques. Understand what Islam is. Islam is a political system, a governmental political system wrapped in the veneer of a religion. You better get this straight. It's not like, well, there's Catholics and there's Muslims, there's Jews and there's Hindus. Islam is unique in that it is a political ideology which most closely approximate, crazy enough, the most rabid paranoia definition of a Christian nationalist, which is to create their own banking, their own courts, their own schools, their own political parties, so that they can gradually take over education, economics, media, government, because the goal of Islam is domination of the world and that the struggle, the jihad, is the struggle against the heathen, and they evangelize by going into the country legally, multiplying their families, mobilizing in their own communities. And here's the problem with Islam that Tucker doesn't get. Look at Europe. Look at Europe. It is not a religion that assimilates into Western civilization, because the whole premise of the environment of Western civilization is the opposite of the caliphate and Muslim takeover and suppression of other religions in observance of one religion, which is why you have no religious liberty. The stronger the Islamic hold is of a country, the harder it is to have religious liberty. It's like trying to have religious liberty in a dictatorship like China or in North Korea or even right now in Hong Kong. It's incompatible. So you have a culture that comes in that cannot be assimilated into your Americana, into your the way that women don't have to be covered up, and your schools and your court system aren't Sharia law separated. There's actually one court system that is a just court system. And you don't have Sharia banking versus other banking. You have where you're all working together to strive to make a flourishing condition where people can own property and have maximum personal liberty and live under the rule of law within a civil community environment. That is not what Islam is. That is what the United States is. It's incompatible. It's putting glass into the oatmeal and serving it up and expecting it's going to go down. And that's where Tucker's worldview comes from, a different orientation that only gradually has come over to MAGA realities. And he's been our champion in so many ways. But you got to understand, when it comes to Israel, when it comes to Islam, he doesn't actually have what I would say is he doesn't approach it without a bias. And you got to be careful when you're under the influence of someone's bias. All right, I'm going to have to end this broadcast here but I'm not ending. I'm going to come on tomorrow. You're going to see me again tomorrow. I got another half a show to do. But for today, this is enough. But I want to remind you, I've got Next Level Spiritual Warfare. This is where we are right now in America. We're at the next level of spiritual warfare. And you need to activate your own God-given authority to discern what God is calling you into, because it's going to be a year, like I said, of shifting and shaking, and it's going to require that you have a clear mindset as to what is true and what is false, because your discernment is going to be tested this year. Call 800-910-6349 or go to lancewallnau.com/next level for the Next Level Warfare. How much is it, Brother Lance? Well, it depends on how generous you are. I'm kind of putting it out there for whatever you want to pay. How's that for a deal? All right, I love you guys. I'll see you tomorrow. God bless.
Did you enjoy this latest episode? Please remember to share it with your friends, because the more knowledge you have, the better equipped you are to navigate the world.